And I started tapping into a sadness that I was like, I don't see an end. If I start allowing this to come out, I don't know how long I'm going to be here crying. But it came from a very, 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 very deep place. And I remember tilting my head up, and you were there with me. And I think you had either a shaker or a feather. And you were breathing with me, you were pulsing with me in this wave that was coming up. And you said, go, I've got you. Hello, beautiful bluebirds, and welcome back to another episode of Deja Blu. And if you can tell that this isn't my regular set, because Deja Blu has officially up-leveled in all of the ways. This is my vision on my vision board was that we would be sitting in an esoteric wet dream, and it is actually happening right now in real time. And again, today we have Rev Briana Lynn as a guest. That is the first official guest that I am interviewing. We did a birthday edition podcast that Andre came on and interviewed me as it was the morning of my birthday, and the set had just been completed. So we decided to do a birthday edition podcast. However, this is my first official guest that I am interviewing in the Deja Blu upgraded, esoteric, wet dream, cherry blossom and hands of God podcast. So excited.
The esoteric wet dream. Oh, I love it. It's really, really lovely, actually. It feels so good to be here, Blue. Congratulations. You are truly creating beauty, love, and unity, even in your set.
And you always dress up so beautifully for the podcast. And that's really also, you act as a muse. When you show up, you dressed up and you've got your beautiful new coat on and you're playing with different color palettes.
Yes, I am.
That for me is a reflection that I'm doing something that is activating something within you, which means success. And that's really what I want to do, is to create a space for you to be able to go, hey, I'm in the right frame, so that the value of my artwork can be presented effortlessly to the world. Yeah. And so thanks for being my muse and inspiration to continue to up-level, so that I can serve you to be in your oracle, which serves many people, which activates people, so the whole planet is winning.
Oh,
yes.
That's the kind of frame we want to create. That was a great frame creation, just really encapsulating that spell and how, we activate each other, which is what we wanted to talk about today.
Yeah, we're going to talk about today our friendship, our connection, the forever archetype cycle of student and teacher, and how we have utilized also going into some of the depth and being in the uncomfortable, which has actually created a foundation of trust within the friendship. But we'll talk about that in a second. But everybody, we have Rev Briana Lynn again back on the podcast. We have actually set up a level of accountability now, so that every 2 weeks we come together and we record a podcast, and we talk about topics that are on our heart, topics that we think we could be illuminating, and even getting uncomfortable, which seems to be the realm in which you get most comfortable.
Yes, it's true.
Where most people feel like really uncomfortable about certain pieces. Like, I remember talking to you after we had a ceremony, and we had a ceremony with a private client, and we decided to do a podcast that was just right at the tail end of it. Yeah. And I turned to you, and it was like getting late. The sun had gone down. We've been working all day long. All day. And I was like, is there anything that's fresh on your mind that you'd like to talk about? And you're like, yeah, I'm packing racism. I'm like, you don't waste a beat, babe. Like,
we're on a mission
to go and get really comfortable in the uncomfortable, when most people shy away from because it's so dense. Yeah. This is where you thrive. And this is why I think that your voice is just so important, and want to continue to support your voice getting out into the world, because it's topics that are really needed on the planet. And with your education and with your study and being a scholar, you bring a specific lens and a perspective that allows us to go deeper into the study without necessarily even studying the very topic that you're talking about. So your voice is very, very special, and I'm so excited that also I got to play a part in the fact that you are doing a TEDx talk January in Big Sky, Montana. Yeah. And are you talking about shamanism?
Well, it's more of an encapsulation of healing. Like, what is the healing journey? And what does it actually mean to initiate healing within yourself, initiate healing within a tradition, initiate healing in life, initiate healing on the planet? So shamanism is one piece of my journey. And I don't want to say a small piece because it's impacted my life greatly, but it's one tool that has come into my life amongst many tools. And that journey is forever blooming and forever reiterating and forever being worked. And kind of up to this point, what has created this resilience or this ability to be with the high highs and the low lows of life and still continue forward in my dharma without missing a beat. And what that vision is and what that is. And that's my kind of definition of resilience, is a lived experience of the most ecstatic states and the most horrifying states of what it means to be human, and staying focused on why we're here. And so my life has been that, just beautiful big binaries, some of the most incredible experiences that humans could ever imagine, and some of the most weird, fucked up shit that life has to offer, that I've seen, that I've experienced, that I've tasted firsthand, to know what this range is and to choose that middle path of metta, that knowing that it's here for ultimately to be transmuted with myself and become deeper tools of service, deeper tools of space holding, deeper tools of empathy, deeper tools of connection. So having no resentment for that extreme binary, but like, so that's what it dives into.
I mean, come on, the perfect theme. They reached out to me and they were like, do you know anyone that would be great to speak into the theme of resilience? I was like, I know just the person to direct you to. And I also think that just resilience has been such a huge theme of us going through 2020, 2021, and then rolling into 2022 and starting off a whole new year with a TEDx talk talking about the theme of resilience and simultaneously the healing process, which, whether we want to or not, these past couple of years have forced everybody into in some way, shape or form. And so just giving a little bit of context of that journey that we all get to go through at some point in our lives feels like the perfect way to start 2022. So I'm really excited for that.
Thank you. Yes,
but today we're going to be diving into the conversation of our connection, the journey in which we have traveled, which feels like out of all the relationships that I have has covered the widest range because of the depth that we've really gone to. And I mentioned this in my podcast with Aubrey, and in a lot of the content that I've created, I reference back to you quite a lot. And so I want to continue to open up this conversation of the journey that we've gone through within our friendship, how we have supported both of us of exponential growth, and simultaneously, what has it taken for us to get here? So I'd love to just hear a little bit from you.
I love that we're interviewing each other on our friendship. Like that's what's happening right now. I'm really excited.
It's important because I get a lot of messages that are like, how do you attract these kind of people into your life and maintain such deep friendships? And I think that this is, even broader topic of what does it take that we don't see in the highlight reel of our Instagram stories or the content they create that goes on behind the scenes to be able to actually lean in the way that we do.
Yeah.
And
we
don't
mud
just
wrestle.
We're
That's really what we do. We work it out through mud wrestling. Like also that piece too of like the romanticized version of us, right? Like to really, I think one thing that's important in deconstructing whatever you want to call it, domination, patriarchy, systems of oppression, is when we receive accolades and attention from people who are watching or tuning in, part of what is helpful is to also reveal the place of struggle and the place of where we don't have it all together and the places where we're still learning. And it doesn't have to be every intimate detail of our deep, crusty shadow lives, but something that says, I'm also human, and like take the pedestal out from underneath us of like, we're human and we have our own patterns and our own shadow and our own pieces that we're working through. And our friendship has been a beautiful place for us to bring some of those pieces too, and how we've navigated and loved each other through that. So it's like, yes, what we've learned, and yes, the expansion, and yes, the miracles. And I'm a shadow walker is something that I've really been stepping into and honoring that in my life, like naming the shadow. It's not that we just transcend it, like to deeply understand it will help us so that we don't repeat the same thing in the future by deeply inspecting it and like slowing down and deconstructing it, understanding the pattern and the algorithm of it. And that's what I feel so much time that I've spent in shadow or grief has been studying the algorithm of the shadow realms to be able to navigate it in a good way and help it transcend off this planet, because we don't need to live there.
So what do you mean by the algorithm of the shadow?
Yeah. So there's a way in which the experience that I have in my body when there's a heaviness or a grief, or it's basically like I like to say the feeling's 180 degrees below the ground. It's all part of the ecosystem above in the air, what touches the sun, and that which is below the ground. So the feeling systems of like anger, grief, sadness, this like churning of emotions where there's an uncomfortability and there's a pain, there's a trauma, there's a fissure happening in the nervous system, there's a break happening in the nervous system. And the body's natural response are these under the ground emotions, these underground feelings. And so often in our culture, we shut them down, whether it's through religion, whether it's through telling our children to be good and happy, whether it's through, that if you're manifesting properly, then you only have joy in your life, like whatever dogma it is, not honoring that 180 degrees below ground creates suppression, oppression, and ultimately depression. And then it comes out sideways in different ways that we see. So when you see shadow, when you see someone in a loop like that, it's actually a suppressed emotion that was a response to trauma that could not be dealt with properly in that moment. And it gets stored in the body and then looped forever into the system that's programming.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful visual now of like a deeper understanding of, instead of the visual I have in my mind is the dark side of the moon, the light side of the moon. I also really like the 180 that's below the surface level, but it's also where the roots and it's where the nourishment is absorbed from. It's where the power,
where the treasure is. The minerals, literally the treasure is in those, and it's that dance between knowing the treasure is there, but not living there, right? Like as beings and being able to go into the depths, feel all of that. And then my learning in this one is like, and how do I pull myself back out of the roots and into the leaves of the sun again? Like literally come back into the sun, literally come back into that light.
Also, something that we've said between our friendship is that any truth that is present for you, I will never get mad at you for bringing that forward to me. We can talk about it. We can break down what's a projection and what actually is an opportunity for growth. But I'm not going to get mad at you or yell at you or for bringing this forward. And that creates a really safe space to go, hey, there's going to be triggers. There's going to be uncomfortable experiences between us. There's going to be blind spots. And whenever you present something in my field, just know that I will receive you from a place that I'm truly listening to understand, not truly listening to respond, which then allows a deeper level of, hey, it's a safe place for me to explore what this is. And ultimately, 100% of the time, which has led us to this point, we've grown from those uncomfortable conversations, which there's been a few of them. And something that I've noticed within all of my closest friends, the ones that are like, hey, I fucking got your back, they've all been born from uncomfortable conversations, from trigger moments, from places where, hey, this didn't feel good or this feels like a blind spot. Can I present it to the altar so that we can transmute it and then become stronger on the other side of it? And it's addressing the roots, the 180 that are below the surface. But what happens every time that realm under the surface is addressed, the roots go deeper. And then the deeper soil that the roots go into is more nutrients. So it absorbs and then it feeds the tree, which becomes stronger and it creates more flowers and fragrance for other people to be able to experience. And then here we are on the podcast sharing wisdom that has been cultivated over the dynamics and the energetics that are exchanged between us that then supports the wisdom to be shared. So it is a whole ecosystem. A friendship and a sisterhood is an ecosystem that needs a lot of nutrients and water and the right amount of sunlight for it to flourish. Otherwise it dies out. It needs attention. Something that you have gifted me in my life is the permission slip to explore my edges without being judged in the refinement process. And I mentioned this on the podcast with Aubrey, specifically within the medicine space. You have allowed me to be weird, to get in those realms that don't have much context from an outside perspective while simultaneously trusting what is coming through before I can even trust it myself. I want to understand a little bit about your journey of getting to that place of trusting others in that place of refinement while their unique gifts are coming in. Because something that I'm really noticing, and a lot of responses I've received from the podcast with Aubrey, specifically talking into the ayahuasca space and working with plant medicine and the mudras start coming through, or the light language starts coming through, or the body's moving in really interesting ways. And we don't have much context as humans to operate in these places that are from the poodle to the wolf, which we've previously talked about. Right. It is more of the primal expression, which does not fit into the usual societal expectation of how we operate as humans. Now, to be a space holder, to be a facilitator of these experiences while someone is processing something like this, and the way that you hold a deep level of trust must, to me, say that you've had to go through this whole journey yourself of learning to trust, and then create a new way of operating as a facilitator to trust that without trying to shut it down. Mm-hmm. There's a very interesting degree of ingredients that goes into supporting that gift, and it's such a fragile process. So I'd love for you to just share a little bit more about that piece, because that very piece has transformed my life, has freaked the fuck out of people because I've claimed the unusual in a very deep way. But it has been a byproduct of the combination of you holding me in the teacher role, or you being the teacher and showing up as the space holder, and the level of love and trust, so that then I can learn to trust it. Once I trust it, then I can refine it. And once I refine it, it becomes my service.
And I learned from you.
That didn't happen just because of me.
No, it's a dance.
So I
can't give my gift without you, right? Like the gift of the activation is just embodied permission that I've learned how to give to myself. And so it's like, it's more of like we're swimming in the same pool together and you're just feeling the frequency that I've embodied, but it's not, and I'm better than, or I'm more anything than. It's literally a choice and an embodiment through the experience of deep trust in self. I choose me. I trust that which is flowing through me. I'm not here to prove anything or fix anyone. I'm literally here to listen. I'm literally here to listen to this frequency, to this energy, to your heart. Like just feel what happens in this space when two bodies are in it. This is ceremony. We don't need any plant medicine. We don't need any music. Like just you and I sitting in the same space, the medicine that just instantly comes in. That's the basis of all ceremony, is just learning how to listen to the subtleties of life. That's what the plants are here to teach us. And early on in my work with the plant teachers, I fell deeply in love with ayahuasca through what she gave me, which was walking out of the fantasy of taking myself off the planet. She gave me a deep connection to the feeling of purpose in my body. It wasn't necessarily a visual of, oh, Briana, you're going to do this in your life. It wasn't a timeline visual. It was an embodied, felt experience of, oh, I have a purpose. And it feels like this. And when it feels like this, I'm in that river. I'm in that flow. She gifted that to me. And I told her anything that she wants, anything that I can support with. And this is the metaphor in which the plant medicine speaks to me. I'm not saying that this is real. I don't even know what it was, and I don't pretend to know. This is the way that this entity, this plant, decided to speak to me. And every person who sits with it will have a different experience, and different traditions will have communal experiences. But there is no one experience of visionary plants ever. There are traditions that can layer their own stories on top of it, but I call her in reference to what I've seen, not out of place of saying this is true for everyone, but my relationship with this entity that I call ayahuasca or yahe, this medicine, the combination of the vine and the leaf, Banister Afsascapi, and Psychotria viridis, made into a decocted tea. And so from the beginning, I had a really interesting experience where there was a lot of shutdown in the space. And I felt a calling within me to make a song, and a hand was placed on my mouth. And not like covered fully, but just like a shh, like. What I was experiencing internally was the most blissful, the most sweet, the most precious. And the way it was reflected back to me later was that it sounded like I was having like painful sex, like that I was making moaning noises and like trying to sing out, but that there was actually this interpretation of it from the medicine man, from the curandero, that there was a needing to channel my energy elsewhere. Like, this is not good energy, is what I was told. And this was one of my first experiences ever with any altered state. I'm 22, 23 years old, young, impressionable, and being told like I was making sounds in the space that were like offensive. And then there were a series of other experiences where I was touched inappropriately in ceremony a few times from people who were in more of the higher ups in the tribe. And I decided eventually to not do work with them anymore. But like during that experience, I wasn't talking to anyone about it. I also really didn't know how to negotiate the beauty that was coming through ceremony, and also this happening that happened more than once that was very uncomfortable and unsafe for my body.
Mm-hmm.
I was receiving the most beautiful experiences, studying with masters from the Amazon who have this high status within their community. And like at the same time, there are a couple of them that are crossing lines that are not okay. Who do I talk to? And felt very confused and just took the medicine and took the healing when it was, and then decided after almost 2.5, 3 years that I wasn't going to work with them anymore, and just kind of let that be. And, received the gift of keeping my life and feeling my purpose and like, whoa, waking up wanting to be alive and just that feeling. And so continuing to pull that feeling, and discovered family constellations and neurolinguistic programming and different healing modalities that helped activate those states of working with the other than conscious. It's like ayahuasca was guiding me to study trauma-informed coaching, to study with One Taste and learn orgasmic meditation and become part of their first like training group, to go to the United Nations University for Peace. Like all these pieces were guided after my work with medicine, but integrating the deeper, what I call shamanic realms, the dance with the oneness, that space where we get to taste what we are, and then learning how to integrate that into who we be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's been my journey with the medicine, really, is like, okay, go into that oneness space and then understand the culture that we have here, specifically where we live in Southern California, and supporting people to ground that energy, ground that learning, embody it, breath, sound, movement, touch into every day, that it's not just a one-time experience. This isn't about the plant medicine check-off list. This isn't shamanic Disneyland. This is a prayer for our own healing and for the planet, and it requires a deep reverence, and that's why we have a church, and that's why we are protected, and that's why we don't just sit with anyone. This is one piece of a much larger toolkit that those who are ready to explore that will know the calling. I don't recommend it for everyone. You'll know. You'll know. And there's no dogma about it other than that we learn how to be kind and hold good space for each other's healing. We've just invited in a therapist on our board, a trauma-informed therapist, to help us navigate other things that might come up. We have an incredible sister who's a Supreme Court lawyer as well, who's joined our team, who's really helping us understand how to hold this in a good way as a nature-based church who sits with the plants to understand those realms. But that's not the only thing we offer. That's one piece of a much larger conversation. That includes the work that you do, not only in fluorescence, but the one-on-one work that you've done. Like, you've been an integral part of the Earth Temple team, which includes intention and integration facilitation, Daughters of the Moon, different programs that we've run, even Halloween, Song Circle. These are all ways of building tribe and integrating. And even what we offer to the world has been part of our integration, I feel, in the medicine space. And just honoring like the alchemy that it's taken within myself also requires those who want to receive it, because a lot of people either want like strict rules or some need a little bit different types of guidance, but like you and I fit together in that way. So it's like teacher-student relationship is like a jigsaw puzzle. I can't activate my gifts without you. There is no hierarchy here. There's never been. And there is an old paradigm like the one who has the knowing and the one who does not have the knowing, and that there's somehow, that's not true. It's we're exchanging our gifts, our codes in those ways of like deep bow, and then we can re-exchange and re-exchange forever. That's an infinite friendship is coming into that. And you and I have done that so beautifully. I've received so much from you around this podcast and the way you've shown up in consistency and your devotion and like navigating so much intense energy with so much beauty.
Thank you. It feels so amazing to be able to create a level of equality of we give, we receive of equal measure, and we create this slinky effect of, one of us being in our power and then it pulls another one up, and then another one of us being in power and pulls the other one up, and it's just this constant like, hey, if you win, I win. And it creates that very deep default of recognizing. And something that you said actually on my birthday Instagram post that you created on your page, which you have such an incredible way of articulating your words and writing poetry, spoken word, riffs kind of style. Like it just comes from a very clear channel of speaking your deeply authentic truth. And the way that you articulated it, of the sweetness and the ferocity, and how I pronounce it, yeah. And the way that we bring the two medicines of equal measure and of equal importance, because it covers all spectrums of what the human expression can look like. It can be super ferocious and super intense and powerful and phoenix-like and dragon in the lair that breathes the fire that then creates the fertile soil for the transmutation process. And then the sweetness and the angelic balm and the importance of the two pieces that come together, while also recognizing I'm not trying to be like you and you're not trying to be like me. We just get to support each other being in the right frame, that this is my superpower and this is my contribution. And together we create the yin and yang, which is the entirety of the offering.
Yes.
And so it's learning to dance in our default without needing to change another to accustom to what feels like my natural rhythm. It's a celebration of we need the fire as much as we need the honey.
Yes.
And it's recognizing that when we come together, we bring both those pieces, and then we can create really sweet and powerful transformations that feel like the cosmic mother's embrace will also do no harm and take no shit. Sort of mentality. And so we've collaborated on Salmain Halloween experience where sisters have gone through massive transformation. We collaborated on ceremonies. We've of course collaborated on the podcast, which is a reoccurring theme.
Forever and ever, amen. Yes.
And which one?
Forever and ever, amen.
Oh,
I
yeah.
said yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And whatever wants to come from this point forward. And so for me, it feels like I get a memory of a ceremony that we sat once, and I was laying on the healing mat, processing a very, very, very deep level of grief around my hearing, and how so many times of my life that I have, it's okay, it's happening for a reason, and subconsciously gaslighted myself around actually how sad I was around the whole process. And every time I went, it's okay, it's happening for a reason, I trust, what was actually happening was like a deep grief that I pocketed and pocketed and pocketed and pocketed, and didn't realize that it accumulated into this well in my gut that was just sitting there, that was just the deepest level of grief I did not know I even had. And I remember I went to a Mayan ceremony here in Venice a while back, and she gave us these like tobacco cigars, and you'd smoke it until the light would go out, and then the ash would drop, and then she would read the end of the tobacco, and she would give you a reading on it, and she'd go one by the people around the circle.
Great
special
gift.
Tradition.
Come on.
And she read my tobacco, and she looked at me. She said, "You have a very, very, very deep sadness inside of you that needs to be released." And in that moment, I was like, "Well, I'm having a great time. I feel fine. What are you talking about?" No, and it really wasn't. It wasn't something that I could truly understand or consciously grasp.
Yeah.
Which she read, and it was about a week and a half to 2 weeks later, we sat in a ceremony together, and I was on the healing mat, and you were at my head, and I started tapping into a sadness that I was like, I don't see an end. If I start allowing this to come out, I don't know how long I'm going to be here crying. But it came from a very, 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 very deep place. And I remember tilting my head up, and you were there with me, and I think you had either a shaker or a feather, and you were breathing with me, you were pulsing with me in this wave that was coming up, and you said, "Go, I've got you." And I remember that moment so clearly, because it was so big and so great and so heavy and so needed. It required to know that it was okay for me to publicly, in the middle of a space, go there and not just go there, but with the permission of knowing that I'm being held. And I cried deeper than I've ever cried in my life. And I felt like the kettle was like boiling. It was like, when it's boiling, and then someone just you gave me permission to open up and the steam could be released. And I think I was crying for like, I don't know, an hour straight or something.
I remember that.
And it was that moment of, it wasn't just you saying, go, I've got you, but it was the back context of, I trust you when you say that you have me. And that it's welcomed in this space to release this piece, which for all I know, could have created cancer at the age of 60 years old because they had no outlet.
Right.
And it sat in my gut and create pancreatic cancer or something because it needed to sit somewhere, and I gaslighted myself unconsciously. So if it wasn't for that moment and that space, I don't know how I would have let that out, because when that woman read my fortune and said that there was a sadness inside of me, I didn't have conscious connection with it.
Yeah.
So through the alchemy of our friendship, I now show up lighter, more playful, more in my heart, with a deeper level of empathy and an ability to connect with people, because I have allowed myself to grieve because of the space and the trust that's been cultivated through our friendship. And now to me, this is what sisterhood is about. And that's why I have very few of my closest sisters, because of the depth and the default that has been created with the ones that I have. I'm not just calling in just the surface level. Oh, I like you like me, and it's just like stayed in that light place. I crave that realm now, because to me, it's true healing. And so I just wanted to publicly acknowledge that for what happens behind the scenes that cultivates the alchemy of us to riff like this on the podcast, because of the places you've gone within yourself to learn to trust yourself, that then allows me to trust myself, because you can only meet me where you've gone yourself. And this is the epitome of what the work is and how we show up for the genuine healing of others. So I want to say thank you for that moment. It's forever ingrained in my psyche.
Yeah. Full permission.
Full permission.
Full permission. And reminding ourselves that we ultimately are the only ones who can give ourselves that permission. But it's like, I gave you a space for you to give yourself permission to be like, all right, I'm going to go.
I wouldn't have given myself that permission, because there's all of this like layers of discernment in the space. What is serving the space? Do not wish to detract from the space. I don't want to cry super loud, but then if I'm not crying with a cathartic release, I'm not really tapping into the wellspring of grief that was available.
And there's that dance that you're so good at and continuing to learn, and me too, of learning this dance of like full compassion in this space and full embodiment of my experience, whether we're here in podcast, whether we're in a more sacred space of ceremony, not even more sacred, just equally sacred space of ceremony, whether we're in relationship, like that constant like checking in, but being fully in our experience. And if there was something going on in the space where I needed you, I also know that I can trust you of like, Blue, actually right now is not the time, like come here, bring as much as you can here. I know I can call on you for that because of the, I've seen the relationship that you and this work have developed. And so I know that I can trust you in going there in this space, because if I needed you back, you also know how to call yourself, recall yourself to your body and become present to that support. So it's, this mutual trust. It's just it's not even that I give you permission. It's just as soon as one of us feels it, when we're open in that space, whether it's podcast or plant medicine, it's like we're now in that water. It's not my water. It's not your water. We just have both dove into the frequency field of permission. When I embody that and you're willing to feel that, and I give you one word and that like you just jumped in the water with me. So it's not even that I give you permission. It's like someone has shown me this water too. I don't know where, I don't know how, maybe it was other lifetimes, because I don't feel like I've gotten a lot of permission this lifetime. Outside of intimate partnerships have been like my biggest places of permission. But like to really feel permission from someone who has a position of power and who isn't interested in followers or creating a lineage of the curriculum that I'm going to have Blue then distribute to her people. Like, I'm not creating an MLM in any way. You know, gurus and religions are just really complicated, somewhat spiritual MLMs. I'm not interested. And so my friendship with you has been me really leaning into that kind of intimacy of like, I see your power. I see that I'm supposed to walk beside you. And so that means showing you also like the places where I'm not perfect, not hiding anything from you. So much of that old dynamic as the teacher, it's like, I don't share what happens behind closed doors. I'm coming out of a paradigm with my father, with my former relationships, like that are really still in that paradigm of like what happens behind closed doors stays behind closed doors. For me, I'm like, I want one community, like be up in my business, show me where I'm fucking up, like talk to me, babe. Like I need to know, I want to know. That's my edge, that's my juice. And like you meet me there. And I love your feedback. I love your reflection. It's always so sweet and on point. And if it feels off, you receive that too. And it's just like this, it gets to be juicy too. Like that can be juicy too. Like that has been something we've really discovered. Like the difficult can be juicy too. And that place of growth and that place of beauty. And yeah, drama is just when we start to play out something that isn't ours. And we've bumped up against it a little bit, but like we've stayed real clean in the places that we've trespassed, like how deep we've gone.
Because that is of equal measure, the depth that we've gone then opens up a much broader conversation which welcomes all sides of it.
Yes.
So there's more to work through because of the depth and the range in which we experience, which requires a deep level of compassion, listening, and a matching goal of the direction we're moving in, which is for both of us to be in our power, for both of us to be reflected blind spots that serve that power in ultimate service to the planet and the healing of the collective. So whatever's not in alignment with that shared mission, we talk about it. But we have the same direction. And I think that is a huge pillar in the friendship.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It allows us to like focus on the outcome as much as like our connection, that our connection and the outcome creates this beautiful like intention triangle. Like, and that creates a sustainability, a regenerative quality to it that isn't just about like, do you like me? Do you not like me? What's happening? What are you including me in? What are you not including me in? When can I giddy, 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 giddy. And it's like, we're here for this. And that can just like, and just be here and here. And it's so good. It's so good. It's a sister romance for sure.
There's moments when I just turn to you and I just get lost in your neck.
Yes.
And you always smell like roses.
Thank you.
You have the softest skin and you smell like roses. And I just like disappear in there. I'm like, this is a safe place for me to be for a moment.
Yeah, for as many moments as you want or need, my sweet Blue.
Another piece of medicine that came for me recently, which you have been the embodiment of, and it's such an important teaching, which you just briefly touched upon, is the showing up as a facilitator and needing to be a very polished version of myself, even though it's actually not in alignment with the authentic expression that's coming through. Because of a preconceived notion of how a facilitator is supposed to show up. So this recently presented itself when I was in Lake Tahoe, being called in as a facilitator for a Leaders Create Leaders Mastermind hosted by Gerard Adams, which was sensational and super powerful and activating. And
congratulations.
It was special. You know, it's like,
amazing.
It's the frame.
It's so good, babe. Yes. Keep it going. Good. Yeah.
So we're sitting in a big circle, and on one side of the circle is all the facilitators, and then the rest of the circle is the participants. Now, one person is talking, and my back is hurting. And I could see the split timeline of going, but a facilitator would sit up right now because we are the facilitators and we have, you know, a certain presentation that we're supposed to bring, that we're here and we're fully listening and we're tuned in. If I was to lay down now as a facilitator.
And that we've got it and that we have stamina, and it's like all these weird unspoken metrics of like that I sit and meditate for hours and my lower deltoids are really well worked and I can sit on the floor like this for, watch me, like...
Which takes 2 degrees to the right from authenticity to performance.
Fully.
because of a preconceived notion of a facilitator, I'm supposed to be this certain way, which actually isn't authentic.
No.
And it's the authenticity that actually is the greatest medicine we can offer to the space.
Is it? The greatest leadership.
And it's something that I have witnessed you do time and time again. And you lay down and you take the time you need and you're still tracking the space and you're still fully present and you're still listening. And you are listening to your body so you can be of service. Yes. So in that moment, I remember the fork in the road happened and I had the 2 timelines in the presentation of the choice and I chose authenticity.
Yeah, babe.
So I laid myself down and I got comfortable and I pulled a blanket over me and I was the only one in the circle that was laying down as a facilitator, fully present and listening to what was in the space. And I fell into, because I've done this before and I felt in that choice, what am I doing? I'm still kind of not choosing a full choice. I'm still in the other part being like, what are you doing? And questioning my decision. This was the first time really fully that I laid down and I laid down and I was at complete peace with that. I chose to lay down and just be in what was alive because my body was hurting and this was something that was actually supporting me in that moment. And I'm noticing that the feedback that I'm getting quite a lot is I really appreciate your authenticity, deeply authentic individual. Now I'm noticing that this is shattering the pedestal. I'm supposed to have it all figured out. I'm not human because I meditate 5 hours a day and I'm so much more spiritually evolved than you.
I've hacked everything. Watch me. Like, what?
And so that was another bit of the medicine that you've poured into my experience is the authenticity that is born within the facilitation role as opposed to creating an energetic hierarchy, which is continuing to perpetuate the patriarchy and the unsustainable model of the triangle, one above the next, as opposed to the circle of equality. And we are a circle that is based on the foundation of listening.
Yes.
And that is what it means to be of service. Genuinely. What's your journey been like with the difference between performance and prayer?
Oh, you know I love that question, man. You just throw me a juicy one after that beautiful monologue. Jeez Louise. First of all, Blue, I just love you so much. And I love this place that you're tapping into of like, that interpersonal relationship is where it all begins. Like whether it's a pyramid or a circle, like whether we're doing point up, point down, isn't only in the militaries, isn't only in corporations, isn't only in the government, isn't only in race, isn't only about gender. It's about our interpersonal relationships. Like, am I trying to be one up or one less than you? That's where we start with intimacy and equality right here. And that is what you're willing to do. That's where you're willing to lean in with me, with everyone else, and really come to that. We meet at the table, right? Like we all meet at the same table. We all have unique gifts to bring that forward and be like, and the listening to the collective at that table and fully offering our gifts, that's leadership. The combination of listening and offering fully, simultaneously, 100% tuned in and 100% expressing. All the time. That's what we're working, right? That's what we're expanding into, that form of leadership. So it's just an honor to lead next to you, right? Like that's what it is. We're building leaders. There's no followers this time. We're building leaders who can be in the movement, start the movement, activate the movement everywhere. They're in, you know?
It is the Gene Key, which I have because I'm in the prosperity retreat right now with Richard and the Gene Keys. And it goes into the primary triad, which is the top 4 spheres at the top of the chart.
Zipperal.
And my vocation is the shadow of complexity and the city of quintessence. And I'm learning about complexity and quintessence. And complexity speaks into the space for the desire to be validated and acknowledged within the space. Complicates everything because it's actually not listening to what's going on, so that when one speaks, it sounds like it kind of missing the mark a little bit here. And it's not about the words that are being spoken into. It's actually just about where it's coming from for the desire to be externally acknowledged within the space, which creates a complexity within the environment because someone can say something and I can respond completely off the mark because I'm not listening, which is the programming partner of deafness.
Yeah.
Perfect. With quintessence, so the gift of simplicity. And the simplicity is a deeper level of listening. And then the gift of the superpower of the city of quintessence is actually the ability to listen so deeply that when then one speaks, it is so clean and so precise with the fabric laced around it of humor, which then opens up the heart of those beings, which activates a higher truth in the space. Now, the best part about this is it's in my prosperity pearl sequence, which means that it's part of my brand and how I actually call in finances.
Yes. Of course. I mean, that's this podcast, no? That's essentially what you've been doing.
Which
You
is,
bring in the deep, deep depths of laser truth with like your sweet playfulness, your cherry blossomness. Like in the poem, I call her the cherry blossom tree. I'm the baobab tree. Let's just get real. Those giant desert trees that like
massive trunk,
massive.
huge roots.
And they can like survive the craziest desert storms, like crazy shit. So that's our friendship, just like a little taste.
I love it. I love that context.
I had to find a metaphor because it's so beautiful. But that place of like moving into what can actually move the masses, right? Like the way I saw it the first time I heard about Quintessence was like a ballerina on the tip of a crystal, like on her tiptoe, turning around, like this very like pristine, like ding, like tip of the toe, tip of the clit, tip of the iceberg, tip, 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 ooh, do, 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 do. And just that deeply condensed transmission that every word is intentional, that every word is a pin drop on a map. Words are actions too.
Chelsea laughs about this because she says at least one time in a podcast, every podcast at least once, I get full body shivers.
Yeah.
When you said the ballerina on top of the crystal, I was like, ooh.
Yeah.
And then I looked at Chelsea, she's like, it is.
There, we counted it.
Deep resonance in the body. Yeah. And just having the context for around what our brand is. What is it that's the unique piece that's actually creating the magnetic quality that is drawing in the attention and then allowing that energy to be translated into supporting to live the lifestyle that I live and to give it a deeper level of roots and context.
Yeah.
And I think that that's also going back in full circle of our connection is where you meet me in that.
Yeah.
You're not afraid. In fact, actually, the tree that you are, how do you pronounce it?
Baobab.
Baobab?
Baobab.
They're in like the African plains,
Yeah,
right?
they're all over Africa, but also in Tanzania.
And they're in the desert, like really harsh conditions, but they also have huge trunks.
Huge trunks. Really special root systems. Like their roots are big, but not super deep because it's so dry, but they can grasp. So when these huge desert storms comes, like the trees grasp to the ground and can survive like these ridiculous, like tsunami-like winds coming through.
And here's your gene key of the gift of perseverance with the city of your life's work of invincibility.
Don't I know it?
Come on.
And just my little tree metaphor. It's so sweet.
Do you have quintessence in your chart?
I don't, but it's one of my favorite ones.
Do you have deafness in your chart?
No, I don't have style either, but we know that I do. So
I love that I operate from like,
tell me your numbers.
I just need your numbers.
Tell me your numbers, babe. Just like, instead of business cards, you just hand people little forms. Before I can have this conversation with you, I just need you to fill this out. I'm going to look at your chart and then we'll have a chat.
Yeah. And then we can actually get really real.
And I'll ask you all the deep questions about your cities and your shadows all around here. It's perfect.
Which is actually an idea that I've had for the podcast moving forward. Somebody mentioned, I can't remember exactly off the top of my head who, would be a great idea to every guest that I have on to pull up the Gene Keys chart and then to look at some of the shadows and their superpowers and to create the conversation in a really quickly, much deeper.
That's intimate. That's like,
it's
can I look in your underwear drawer? Kind of intimate. Like, what's happening for you behind the scenes? Let's take a little peek at your astrology. You know what I'm saying? Your astrology.
Yeah.
So I'm into it. I'm kinky like that. Y'all can see my beauty and my shit on mine. But it'd be great. I want to see Richard's.
Right? Whenever I see someone's Gene Key chart, it reminds me of, the scene from Titanic where Rose is laying naked on the chaise lounge and Jack is drawing her.
Yeah.
He's like, it's a very
studying
intimate
her curves.
moment. It reminds me of that.
That's exactly what it is. You're studying our curves.
That reminds me of a story I need to tell you, which is a little bit of a tangent, but I think you'll appreciate
We're
it.
your queens of tangents. And we always come back,
queen.
whoa, lassie, whoa. We
yeah.
usually come back like 85% of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if we don't, then that's the direction
It's not needed to be done if we don't.
Okay. Tangent. Went to the gynecologist today.
Yum.
I dressed in my finest because I felt like that was at least the first date before she started looking eye in eye with my vagina. Anyway, even when I say the word vagina, it feels a little bit cringy, my sister. I'm going to say yoni.
Yoni.
I feel it's more aligned.
Whatever word works
for me personally.
Yeah.
Okay, so in the doctor's office, 2 masks, the whole situation, me being hard of hearing, I read lips.
Oh.
I don't know what's going on.
No.
Okay. The assistant walks into the room. She's putting on her rubber gloves. All right. So I'm like, okay, we're about to get to business. It's not taking long, but you're going to be looking at my vagina in not too long from now.
Yeah.
Okay. Eye to eye under a magnifying glass. So surely nothing
and like
to hide.
light up duck lips, that just light up and pull it. Yeah.
So anyway, she turns to me and she says something about my dress. What she actually said was, I like your dress. What I heard was lift up your dress.
It's a quick progressing relationship.
I was like, oh, well, we're already here. I turned to him, responded, so would you like me to take off my underwear? And she looked at me very perplexed.
Yeah.
With her rubber gloves on. And she's like, no, not yet. And I was like, oh, okay. So I'm like this.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, I said I like your dress. And I'm like, oh, not time yet. Got it. You're the assistant, not the actual doctor. So she comes over and takes my blood pressure and she's kind of awkwardly looking at me. And I was like, hard of hearing. So apologize for that. She's like, oh, no worries. It was really funny. And then she's about to leave and she goes, okay, so sit with your feet on the stirrups. And now is your time to take off your underwear. I was like, oh, it's time now? Okay, cool. Thank you. Got it. And this actually, being in that position with the woman, by the time that the doctor has walked into the room and the time that she's literally looking inside of me, it's probably about 30 seconds.
Yeah. They're swift.
This is what it feels like looking at someone's cheeky chat.
Yeah.
To come back full circle.
Just slip you right in there. You know what I mean? Just
hey, looking real
light up
sweet
duck
down there.
lips.
Yeah. I also get really awkward in those sort of situations and I ask really inappropriate questions like, she's nice, right?
How the tube's looking down there, guys.
Yeah. How many vaginas have you seen today before seeing me? She's like, oh yeah, 9. I was like, that's a lot of vagina. That's a lot of yoni.
That's a lot of happens.
Anyway, so I thought I'd just share that story with you because it's really funny and how the tangent of my hearing takes me in very interesting positions. And simultaneously, the golden thread that ties all of this in is the vulnerability. I mean, I can't think of anything more vulnerable than the doctor with the magnifying eyeglasses that's looking directly into my Stargate Enterprise and is reflecting back to me that she looks great.
Taking notes, right? And taking notes.
Yeah. And then gets a second opinion from her assistant.
Hey, you guys gotta check this out in here.
Yeah. You want to bring anyone else in?
And you're like, what's happening? She's like, no, I'll tell you at the end. Come here. I need you to check this. Look at this one. You see?
Yeah. Open wide.
Yeah, I had an IUD removed in 2017 and one of the legs had broken off.
Oh.
And so when she pulled it out, she was like, oh. And I was like, oh?
Not what I want to hear right now.
That's not what you want to hear when you're getting your IUD out from your pussy, from the nether regions of where it holds. And it was like very uncomfortable while I had it. I don't recommend or not recommend contraceptive. That's such a personal experience, but it was so physically painful to have in when it was coming out. I was really excited and it was uncomfortable to get it pulled out. And then one of the little tips had fallen off. She's like, don't worry, it'll come out. Your period will get it out. And I clotted for about 3 months kind of oddly during my period. And then I hope that it got out because I'm regular now and everything's fine. But it's just like this.
Yeah.
What? That like impersonal is hard.
Oh. That's the last thing I want to hear. Oh. Ah! Get out of here! Anyway, so
Yonis.
Full circle, the Jinkies, vulnerability, and nothing is quite like the vulnerability of looking at one's shadows. So I thought at the beginning of the podcast, we could pull up Jinky chart and get really real, really fast, take all the masks off, and actually recognize your shit also stinks.
I love that. I love that. Welcome to Blue Season 3. Your shit also stinks. Will be
the tagline.
It's right now like a mystical look at the effervescent oneness of all that is life. Something really beautiful like that. And the next season will be
P.S.
Your shit also stinks.
And it's all in God's hands. Tagline.
Just really awkward and wonderful. I mean, that's you really allow yourself to embody a level of playfulness and awkwardness with people that give a lot of permission to that. Like, so there's this space and feeling here, and Blue's just like, yeah, that's where we're at right now.
Yeah.
Feel that with me.
Let's get real. In a world of filters and masks and pretending to be version of ourselves that we think will be accepted, what would it look like to actually just get really real and be like, hey, this is the 180 that's below the ground.
This is where I'm at. This is who I be. With our joy and with our rage. That's the thing. It's not like we have to share the deep talks all the time. Like that's what you and I really change codes on. It's like it's also being able to fucking celebrate when it's time to celebrate.
Yeah.
Like be enthusiastic in life. Be convicted in all directions, right? Like it's not one path. It's all part of life. That is enlightenment. It's bringing light to all of it. It's bringing lightness to the grief. It's bringing lightness to the joy. None of it means anything other than that we have it for this moment and then it's gone. Mm-hmm. That's it. Enjoy the grief. Enjoy the light. Enjoy the child. Enjoy the old person. Like it's going to be gone. It's going to be gone. Whether you're a cherry blossom or a baobab, it's going to be gone. So like, let's do our thing. Let's do it well. Let's share the medicine, share the love, make it taste good, look good, smell good, make the better party so we can help end human suffering and really activate from a place of like enlightenment. We're bringing light to all of it. No part left behind.
Well, I think that's a really good place to close it out. That's just something that is constantly received from when you share. It's permission to feel all of it. And I think that's just a message that will continue to be the message until the moment that we take our last breath in this life and onto the next. Permission to feel all of it. Reverend Briana Lynn. My final question for you. If this podcast, I think I've asked you this before, but maybe it's changed. If this podcast, Mike, was linked up to a global transmission that is going to hit every radio station and every TV across the nation, and you have 30 seconds to deliver a message, what would you say? And you can take a breath and take a moment if you want.
It's so good.
And I want you to really play with the muscle of imagination that this is actually happening.
Okay. This is definitely season 3, by the way.
Yeah.
That what you've suspected is true, that we're making this life a lot harder than we need to, that there is an opportunity for each one of us to remember that little child deep inside of us and wake them up, remember our imagination, remember our play, remember that infinite space that we knew how to access as little ones. That sunlight, that golden thread is not a lie, it's not a dream, it's who and what we are. And when we remember that, as we're remembering that and activating that now, that will be the awakening. We all remember. We all know it. No matter what culture, no matter what background, no matter what trauma, we all know who we are deep inside of our hearts. And I believe in every single human that they can find that in this lifetime. We can wake up together and end the suffering. Truly. I believe in you.
I believe in me more because you believe in me.
Yeah. I believe in the goodness of the human heart. I'm a stand for the goodness of the golden thread that lives in every human heart.
Yes, I believe that too.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, hopefully one day that will be transmitted across the whole planet into the ears and the hearts of those that are ready to receive the message.
And so it is.
So it is. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And to all of you that are listening and that really resonate with Reverend Briana's message, how do they find you? How can we connect with you? How can we learn a little bit more about the Earth Temple of Shamanic Arts and everything that you're creating? The Orgasmic Oracle Codes. Please, would love to hear.
Amazing. Earthtemple.com is the main website. You can see schedule. Sign up for our newsletter is the best way to stay in touch with all the things. And we send something out about twice a month, not too much. And then me on Instagram is at Rev Briana Lynn. And then the Earth Temple is at the Earth Temple with dots in between the Earth and Temple. Those are ways that you can connect with us. At Rev Briana Lynn is on all the platforms, but I really operate on Instagram the most.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank
you for sharing yourself online. Thank you for opening up these offerings. Thank you for always, every 2 weeks, bringing your presence, your attention, your intention, your love, your wisdom, and your softness. And so grateful for everything that you bring to Deja Blu podcast.
Yeah.
And for continuing to allow the legacy to live on.
Thank you, Blue. I love you.
I love you very much. And to all of you beautiful bluebirds, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Deja Blu podcast. If you resonated with this podcast and you feel like this is something that you would like to share, please go ahead, share it on your Instagram story, send it to your messages, direct messages to people, send them the link. And with you in the support of being able to spread this message far and wide, we can reach many more people and allow this to start becoming a place of empowerment for those individuals that are so deeply calling in for it. And thank you for being here today. Feel free to write a comment if you're watching on YouTube, and write in the comments. We are creating a community that goes back and forth in the comments and whatnot. And until next time, sending you so much love and so much appreciation. Bless.